Thank you all for coming tonight. We're going to get started. This is, of course, Founder Therapy, so get ready. We're talking about AI agents in operations tonight. And first, I'd like to thank Galvanize Co-working, which is the lovely space we find ourselves in, for allowing us to have this beautiful event and this beautiful space. It is a co-working space. We have about 100 startups in this beautiful building, plus many individuals. If you're ever in need of space, it's a beautiful place to come. My name is Katie Whitcraft. This to my left is Maria PNR. Hello. We are the founders of ScaleSpark, an amazing company that you should check out. ScaleSpark AI. We do operations as a service for startups and small and medium businesses. And if you don't know what that means, you can visit our website and see all about us. But today we're going to focus on just agentic AI in operations. And for that, I will pass it over to Maria.
Well, thank you, and welcome to our Founders Therapy session on AI agents in ops, and cut the noise and find the value. We know that there is so much talk about AI and agents and how it's going to take over and how it's going to displace jobs. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of non-hype, real things around that. And I am so delighted to have a wonderful panel here on my left, and I'll have them each introduce themselves. So tonight we would like to just really unpack what this all means, on how we can really use AI and agents to grow and scale our businesses. And I am also going to open up questions as we go along. If you have a question as we start addressing something, please just raise your hand and we'll have the panel address the question. I'm sure there will be tons of questions coming up. But to my left is Reddy Mallidi. So Reddy, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, Maria, I'm so delighted to be here. I spent 20 plus years at major companies in executive roles like Intel, ADP, and Autodesk. And recently, last year, I wrote this book. And I'm also planning to publish another book on AI agents this summer. And I advise and consult with C-suite executives and board members.
Thanks. And then we have Kirill Lazarev.
Okay, my name is Kirill. I run a product design experience agency. Our client has raised $500 million owing to our design work. I've been working with the AI products since 2017. By pure luck, we already built 17 different products in AI from different verticals. And we approach things and agents from a user experience perspective, because it's the one thing to build technology, is another thing to implement it into the real use case and give it to the user so they can actually use it. We also won more than 100 different design awards, one of the most nominated agencies out there. And yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And then last but not least, we've got James Goldfinger.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah, if nothing else, you can all go home saying you met a guy whose name is actually Goldfinger. So pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Jim Goldfinger. I'm the partner in a global IT services firm called Customer Times. You'll notice the flag. We've got quite a large resource pool in Ukraine. We predominantly work in the enterprise software space, and my background is predominantly CX, so CRM, CX, customer experience. And when I was frankly ready to retire, and there's one of my colleagues said, on some of the applications we've used, if I fell asleep 10 years ago and I woke up 10 years later, this looks like what I left behind, right? Nothing has changed. And now with AI, with agents, it's clear the world's, we almost feel like we have to time and date stamp every conversation, because what week was that? The next week, the answers are different, right? So anyway, pleased to be here.
Thanks. And I think while you have the mic, Jim, we can just start on that side. And I would like every panelist to answer this question. So in your mind, what is the science fiction part of AI and agents today, and what is the reality of how it's adding value?
Okay, there you go. So first of all, when I saw AI was like the new hot topic, and I reconnected with some friends that were really staying close to it and understanding. And when my this friend of mine said, the answers you get, the developers, and this was when ChatGPT was all the noise, they don't know how it got the answer it gave you. And coming from the IT space, like algorithms, and you might create the wrong code in the program, but you could backtrack from where you started to where you ended. To not be able to do that is pretty scary, and to not know how it got the answer. So back to what's real with science fiction, it needs a lot of human intervention from my mind now. I think it's really, it's a little too dangerous to expect too much to happen absolutely automatically, because we're all learning. First of all, every tool works a little bit different. Every tool gives different answers to the same question if you ask it twice in a row. So there's just not enough known to trust it entirely. That said, if it can help me get 85% of the way of what I need, whatever problem I needed to solve, and allow me to just do the last mile of it, I wouldn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as the saying goes. That there's value there, but I'm not ready to rely on it 100%. I want to use it for what it is, but we all have to learn every day on how to really train it and understand it.
Okay. For me, what's science fiction and what's reality is that people, I think, severely underestimate the speed of the technology, in a sense that if you learn something and do it yourself, you can get to the 5 out of 10. If you hire the proper team, you can get to the 15 out of 10. And I think that gap where you're opening your ChatGPT and do a little prompt of, hey, can you help me to write the email or if you properly structuring the team, understanding what is the agent architecture, understanding what role and function you want to change, you can actually do 10x or 100x more. And I think this is what we should strive for. So instead of opening products like Mac.com or just playing up with the cloud, we have to go deeper and understand what can we actually implement right now and assess that properly. Because just like James said, we have the timestamp on what I'm saying right now, mainly because in the next 3 to 4 months, we get much further out there. And therefore, setting up the proper team and understanding what can go beyond the existing experience, that's what I think the challenge we should focus on.
So let me give an example. 6 years ago, when I was at Autodesk, we had a big business challenge. We had 50 million accounts that regularly needed to be screened for export compliance, and the compliance, because of the regulations and the Department of Commerce continuously updates these lists, it's very, very complex. The traditional rules-based software wouldn't cut it. That's when I started a small team of AI experts, and we built our own machine learning models using PyTorch. This was an open source code that was available. And the complexity, because who's buying software and where is the ownership and how they use the software, you need to track it. And we needed something that's very smart. So we built our own machine learning models, and instead of spending 2 weeks for most complex accounts, we were able to get the answer within a day, which means it's not just saving, it's not saving money from cost efficiency, but our salespeople would be very upset if we were holding a deal for 2 weeks, because time is money. You need to close the sales deal very quickly. So that's what was enabled by AI. So that's the reality. It saved us $35 million a year for the company. But now what is hype? So here is what I would say is, let's say airplanes maintenance, it's an extremely noisy data. There is so much data that comes, and what happens is the experts, they can tell which is signal and which is not a signal. But if you just rely completely on AI judgment, you're going to take a risk. So you need to have human in the loop. So let's say the terabytes and terabytes of these signals coming, AI can help you filter out potential signals, and then a human expert is going to be involved and then say, oh, okay, this looks like this, so let's take the flight for maintenance instead of stopping it and then diverting, which costs millions and millions of dollars. So the hype is you cannot just say, AI can just automate this, or I'm going to replace my knee surgeon with AI. It's getting to the hype realm. So be careful what you hear in the media.
Yeah, I'm especially concerned that if it's a surgeon AI, it might hallucinate when it has to do the knee replacement or something. So within all this, and I've spoken to so many founders as well, it's like, how do you really start? Because you get AI native companies who may be a bit better about looking at hiring AI native or educated employees, but there's also a ton of other businesses which I wouldn't describe as AI native. Where should they start of thinking when they're looking at implementing AI and how to drive AI for scale, and what does it really mean?
So I actually discussed a framework in my book, but I'll oversimplify it. But what I would say is start small. You don't need to boil the ocean and go across every department and then say, okay, we are going to be converting everything from marketing operations to financial reporting, pricing, every one of those. That's going to be pretty big undertaking. What I would suggest is first start small, experiment, try to find the 2 or 3 use cases that are going to give you a good ROI if you're an established company. But if you're starting fresh as a startup, then of course you're starting from scratch. You can start with that mindset of, okay, you know what? How can AI change everything, or how can we leverage AI in everything we're going to do so you can be a very AI native company? And once you start the experimentation, you can go and then say, okay, now I'm going to do a pilot, and then for every pilot you do, maybe 1 or 2 out of the 10 may turn out to be really good ones, and then take them to the production level. But you need to have multiple production level ones to see the real ROI. Kirill?
Right. How do you normally start, Kirill? I know you've done so many AI projects.
Yeah, so first, there is a role, and usually people try to automate some roles and try to automate some functions, or just like the group of functions in the company. So you start with defining what are those functions are and what the real humans are doing. And the first approach that comes into mind is just like, okay, let's try to automate them all, and let's create this huge problem that will be solving this and that and that. Let's talk about HR, like the recruiting and screening and capturing the idea, and then summarizing if the people is fitting to the job description or not. So, and they start to build this mega agent that's solving everything, which is completely wrong approach. The proper approach to the thing is this: first, you have the little function, you create the most go-to document that actually trains this little agent on doing some particular task, and then you take another function and you build an agent around that task. You then start to give the task jobs to the agents, just like, okay, so what do you think about that? And what do you think about this? And you actually start to iterating and improving on a one little function. That's really important, because if you try to build an agent that solves multiple things at the same time, you will most likely fail. Therefore, you have an agent who is doing the task number 1, the function number 1, the function number 2, and then what's funny with the agents is that because they become smarter, you actually, the moment when you start building the agent number 3, it can start using the information from the agent number 1 and agent number 2. And because you run some experiments, you know that they're actually giving the proper outputs. Therefore, agent number 4 and agent number 5, agent number 10, every time becomes incrementally better. And this is how you solve the whole HR operation of whatever function you have. And by training them one by one from small little tasks, you inevitably become better in solving all of them. This is the first one, and the second one, this is the one that I love the most, is that you firstly train AI agent to do something, and then you train another AI agent to check that AI agent. And then they start to argue and say, hey, you should do this, or you will be fired. And this is Sam Altman. He said that if you start to saying that you will be shut down, the AI apparently doing their job better. That's the quote. So once you start to see in the logs how they interact, when they start doing that, it's actually a good sign that you're in the proper direction. So by properly building AI native companies, you just have to, keep human in the loop, but first train the little agents to solve this big problem, and then have another agents to, coerce in another agent. I guess that's the approach.
So it sounds like you're literally taking a job and you're splitting it into a bunch of interns.
Yeah.
And you have to be very precise in what the tasks of the interns are to do the job.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jim, I know you have some wonderful insights on that.
Well, no, I mean, the space that I'm in the CX space, and having worked probably half of my career for software companies and half for consulting companies, implementing software. Software vendors have a tendency to always sell every customer on the latest, greatest capability that they have, right? And what I think is a big miss in what I've seen is not taking into consideration the customer's state of readiness for whatever you're presenting, right? So if they're at this level of maturity and your product represents this level and you sell them that, it just never works. And it's a bit of a turn up, and it's never successful. I haven't seen companies take big, major steps of maturity. The thing with AI that I think is a little bit different is you could look at it one way and say, we're not sophisticated enough to use AI. And a lot of companies are being told, if your data's not right, then you can't use AI. I would argue that every customer has an AI state of readiness, but it's parallel to the rest. It's sort of aligned on the side to their level of maturity in general, right? So if they don't have data that's reliable, then there's certain things in AI they aren't ready for. But to be able to process contracts, or HR to look up, what my HR compliance document is, what's my per diem? Like, there's so many things you can always do. So where you get started, also even from an ROI standpoint, I think I would and some of the customers I speak to, if ROI means replacing people, they want no part of it. Now ultimately that's going to catch up, but you don't want to start there, right? If the first thing you do with AI is to replace people, now you've set a bad precedent for everybody who's left, right? And so there's a cultural change management, there's a general state of readiness, and then there's an impact, and you want people to buy in. And so how is this going to help me, not replace me? And so I just think you have to really be thoughtful on multi-dimensions, if you will.
And I think you've got great statements that in our conversation that you had. You really need to start off thinking what it is you want to increase. Can you expand a bit on that?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, I say, for me, one simple way to think about AI is it can improve efficiency, proficiency, consistency. Efficiency for your more experienced resources. So help me do what I do faster. I know what I do. These are the 10 steps I do. Where can AI help me? That makes me more efficient. Junior people, which every company ultimately has turnover, and many companies, when the focus went from top line growth to bottom line profit, companies of every flavor were pushing the experienced high-priced people at the door, bringing in experienced people, and hoping and praying that they work out and they're fast learners, right? So AI can certainly help juniors be more proficient, and then ultimately that leads to consistency, right? Where that you balance the scale a little bit, where the juniors, they can't be more efficient yet because they don't know exactly how to do the process, but you can encapsulate all that with AI and bring them up to speed. So when I talk to companies, as I sort of lay out those dimensions and say, where do you think the biggest opportunity? Where's the lever for you? Is it to make everyone more efficient because there's bottlenecks you'd like to clear? Is it that you've got a lot of junior people that need to get up to speed, or you're at risk of losing some experienced people? Or is it that there's an inconsistent process in the organization? And so that would point you to a different direction on how to apply it.
I really love the characterization that Jim talked about: efficiency, proficiency, consistency. I look back when I was at Autodesk and managing all the operations and digital transformation. I had a large client services team, and it was taking almost a year for people to become proficient because we had 15 different tools. The knowledge base was spread across the company, and so it takes a long, long time. So with AI, we would be able to streamline that knowledge base, and intuitively, it feels to me that that 12-month ramp-up time for someone to be proficient, I feel that we can get them ready in 3 months, not 12 months. So that's the proficiency is what AI would enable. It's not about just cost cutting, but how do you make someone superhuman? Whatever you are doing, you become extremely enabled by AI.
Yeah. So there really seems to be then on that 3 different dimensions of impact, of what AI helps me scale, right? Once you hopefully got the people who are more proficient. So it's really what can get started, and how you make that more productive and optimized, how you allow for growth without adding more people. I mean, I keep on hearing how companies are holding back new hires because people can become more efficient. And then other one is how to getting rid of human agents. But that for me is, I mean, you keep on reading articles of companies that's now going to cut more staff because everyone supposedly is now so much better with AI. So from that perspective, who owns the AI strategy these days from a business growth perspective and business strategy? Is that HR that's taking care of that? Is it everyone to his own and just going wild and just sign up many tools?
Why don't you give it a shot?
Yeah. First, I think that the proper approach what you really talk about is that how do we implement AI in the teams? And there is an interesting study that when you implement AI in the teams, the efficiency of the results are actually worse comparing to if one person is using AI, which is surprising. And therefore, mainly because of the fear of losing jobs, people actually are going against, especially in the team environment. So the team environment becomes #1 place how you should implement, or we should implement, everyone should implement AI into their company. And therefore, I don't think that AI is the implementing AI is the angle from the innovation department standpoint, but rather it's that angle should be taken from the leadership and on the team level, where one person in the team or is actually in charge of adding more resources to the AI practice for solving for a particular problem. And if that comes from the leadership from the top and from the people from the bottom, this is where innovation happens. So implementing the team AI into the teams by having the leader in the team, this is the go-to approach.
And do you have any examples of what you've done and the results that you've seen?
Well, I mean, when we talk about the team implementations, for example, we were talking about the legal right now. And the legal is something that people are very scared of because, well, the risk of the hallucination is potentially the risk of losing the contract. And, having used any AI products there becomes more and more challenging. And so we designed this one product who actually look into all the updates from the legal perspective to the SEC and multiple governmental products to see what are the fillings and new up-to-date legal practices in the law right now, given the new compliance that are released. And what we see is that the legal firms who are subscribed to these companies, the senior management is subscribing for it, but the junior managers actually have to use it. And the challenge is that how do we enable the junior managers starting to use AI that essentially replaces them, because it was their work to look on all the filings and all the news that's coming and updates to the laws that's happening. And we solved it by having internal meetings and showing them how can it get there was faster. And as in any legal firms, they have this rule of, the best stands and stays, and the worst leaves the company. So therefore, we tied the product that we designed so they can be better than their peers. And yes, it's kind of sad, but at the same time, this is how we can get adopted of the AI products that they have.
So it does sound that there's cheerleaders that need to start taking the initiative, and then a co-learning process that need to happen within that group. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I talk about, again, in the space that I've been in and watching things evolve. I talk about the fact that a lot of companies are stuck in isolated competencies, right? So when we implement software for, let's say, CRM, whatever it might be, you've got IT responsible, and then you have the business that needs it, right? And so the companies that I've worked with, and I've worked with well over 1,000, I can guess with a fair amount of accuracy before a project starts on how aligned their IT organization is with the business. And I've come across like 2 pretty distinct profiles of IT, for an example, and then I'll bring it to AI in a minute. And that is, there's IT organizations that see the business as a necessary evil. So they know that's why they have their job, but they don't really care to get much into it. They're much more reactive than proactive. They don't care that much about business goals. They just want to do the job they're tasked to do and keep their job, right? And then there's the IT organizations that are true partners with the business, that understand the business, that are learners about the business, and are looking to be proactive about how IT can enable their success. What I'm seeing with AI is I'm also seeing some of these isolated competencies, right? That you've got AI experts, and it was happening with data right before it, right? So before it was AI, everything was about data. To be a data scientist and not be ready to wrap your head around what the business is all about, then you're just pushing zeros and ones together, right? Someone's got to bridge that gap. So I think when you ask where do you get started and how are companies doing it, yes, you're starting to see chief AI officers, but if they're chief AI officers coming from an AI background and AI expertise, that would make me nervous, because if they don't have the business aspect of it, it's a disconnect. And so somewhere the bridge has to be made. And you talked about like cheerleaders or whatever. You need to find, I had one customer, sort of best practice that I came across is at IT leadership said, I only want to hire business savvy IT folks or technically savvy business people into my organization, right? That bridge can come from anywhere, but you got to find it. You got to find someone who's willing to either comes from the business first and really dives into understanding what AI technology is about, or comes from the technology and is passionate about business. Because if you don't connect those dots, you're going to be disconnected on many levels.
So that brings us a little bit into all the different tools and things as well, because I mean, there's such a proliferation of tools and everyone signs up and start chasing the next fluffy thing, and no one seems to be proficient in any one of them. What's some of the good things you've seen around that, and how the tool selection happened, and what's some of the bad things around that? How do you decide what tools to implement?
Well, the other day someone posted that they're using all these tools for marketing purposes, messaging purposes, and I looked at it, it was like 40 different tools. I thought, wow, that's the nightmare for a company IT. That's to begin with, right? And then you add all the subscription licenses. That's crazy, right? So, but what is happening is, let's say you want to create a PowerPoint. Just that, right? You can use one to create the PowerPoint and another one for images, something that does all of it. Or just say LinkedIn post, something that synthesizes the brainstorming ideas, creating video or a picture, schedule it, all those things. The number of tools have become too many, in my opinion. Honestly, for a given task, if you're using more than 2 to 3 tools, it's too many. You need to use, what I suggest is you need to experiment and then see which ones work best for you. For example, I really like Claude for writing purposes more than any other ones because it's very succinct. It gives the answers you're looking for. It listens to the instructions you're giving. So you need to experiment. So would that work if I'm, for example, a few months ago, if I'm writing code heavily, I would probably use OpenAI ChatGPT or Gemini or something else, right? And if cost is a huge consideration, I would look into Mistral or Llama. This is, again, talking purely from LLM perspective. Mm-hmm. But there are so many tools out there, if you're creating these PowerPoint presentations, you might want to start with the Gamma first and then experiment with other tools. There are lots of them, but you need to experiment and then figure out what works best for you. And don't use more than 2 to 3 for a given task. Whatever that workflow is, it is important that you look at your entire workflow and then see which tools give you the best resuls.
Now, Kirill, how do you avoid tool creep in your teams?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. First, I think that the most tools are really bad. I mean, even those that raised millions and millions of dollars, you start using that and you're just like, who did code this? Why does it even exist? I mean, and therefore I think this is analysis paralysis stage where just like you are going into trying to figure out all this millions and hundreds of thousands of tools at the same time, and I think that's the wrong approach. I think the proper approach is that this is what we do. This is what we do in an agency. We have a bi-weekly meeting when we ask employees to automate some part of their job using AI. We use make.com for that. It's super simple. You can take different parts of the data, and then you can use ChatGPT or whatever to automate things. And this is, I think, the proper approach to this. You just seen what the problems are, you've seen what's actually in it, and then you see how people are solving that. And this lays into the bucket of, okay, how do we optimize our work? And another one is, okay, what innovations out there that we don't know yet, and we don't know because we don't know. And for that, you just hang out on Twitter, and it just gives you a bunch of different tools if you want to spend your time like that. But mostly, I found that if you are trying to look into whatever thing out there, it just mostly wastes some time. It's either easier for you to build it yourself, or just use simple tools like Make.com or Clay, CLAY, for the go-to-market, and just use it.
Yeah, the way I see it, the analogy for me is when you're at the baseball game and the seventh inning break and they have the horse racing on the top of the screen, compared to a real horse race. So the real horse race, halfway through the race, it's, one horse may come from way behind, but it doesn't jostle like every 10 feet, right? Whereas, when you want to get the crowd engaged and every guy's winning, every few seconds. That's what's happening here in my mind, right? Like this is a race that just changes every day. Yeah. So I think you can't waste time thinking about it. I think you have to look at every tool and say, does it solve the problem I need to solve today? Yeah. And I assume that I'm not going to use this 3 months from now. I'm going to assume that someone else is going to do this job better, not this company, because they're all just continuing to leapfrog in every problem that gets solved. Now, that might shake out 2, 3, 5 years from now, but this is there's a whole different dimension than anything we've seen before, at least in my 40 years in the IT business. So does it solve the problem? Is it fine if I don't use it? If I'm creating a PowerPoint and that's a great tool today and I don't have access to it 3 months, so what? Something better will come along. It's not a big deal. If it creates a proprietary structure that's throwaway, that's a problem, right? But if it's doing things that I can, and even the tools, whether it's the LLMs or some of these other tools, I'm creating prompts that are helping drive my business. I might have one tool that's a framework that I can put the prompts in. If that company goes away or it's not working that well, I could these days generally repurpose a lot of what I've done in other tools. So I think the horizon is very different than the way we used to look at it. The cost of change is different than the way we used to look at it. You would never replace an ERP system lightly, or even a CRM lightly. But some of these others, you just have to assume you're going to replace because someone's going to do something better, and we should take advantage. But yes, limit the ones that we deal with. And then the other thing, as I was talking about earlier, I still think there's use for some form of center of excellence at a company, so that someone has the view across the board, because what I'm seeing is everybody's doing their own experiments, and you shouldn't reinvent the wheel, or you shouldn't learn the hard way. And it's not even about tools, it's about the process of how you use the tools, about understanding what guardrails really mean, whatever it might be. So it would be useful for there to be either a single person or team, or at least a group that meets regularly to share experiences, so that you're not wasting time. And even worse, paying subscription is 10 different groups, buying similar tools that could have been consolidated.
I can see that will be very happy CFOs looking at expenses. I think we have a question.
It wasn't a question, but somebody had mentioned like looking for new tools on Twitter or X or whatever. One of the things I found was really helpful, because there are a lot of tools, is I'll ask GPT or scrape the web, and under different circumstances say, what kind of tools do this, cross-reference with what kind of tools do this, and then also put in there what have the highest user ratings and is in another constraint across categories, and it'll give me all sorts of interesting things that then I can get a list of which ones to check out first, and it's been very helpful for me. So
So I mean that's using GPT as well, to basically find more interesting tools as well. Ready?
One thing I would suggest is farm your own community, because someone else might be using a different tool. For example, Notebook LM by Google. It's one of the best tools for especially podcasts. I gave a chapter from my book and then asked it to create a podcast, 20 minutes. Brilliant. It's brilliant. And then I told one of my friends who has an AI company. So like that, because if you have the community, you get the idea shared.
Yeah, I actually want to do one more thing over here. So the make.com that I was mentioning, and if you connect that with the V0, or even if you prompt things with the ChatGPT coding right now, you can actually build a lot of internal stuff yourself. And this is fascinating. It's like you don't have to go to the subscription from the YC company and pay them $100 if you can have someone in your team to build this for you in 3 days that will be owned by you, and you'll be building the stock for yourself. I mean, and if you have a great team, and this is the reason why I was mentioning great team, because if you have someone who is really in depth into the building through the prompting, you can actually solve lots of problems. I actually think that in the future, every company would have someone in-house who would be managing and doing what 10 developers and 15 designers and 15 business analysts are doing, just being that person of who was, in the age of 2000s, there was this person who is managing the servers, buying the domains and domains from, and actually building the design and coding things. So, and then this person disappeared because there is no need for this person anymore. But right now we have the same person who has come back. He's stretched out and he's back. He's working and building the product. He's designing the product. He's doing data analysis. And I think this is where we all go. And the faster we can understand the capabilities of things that we can build right now, the easier for us it would be to hire someone or to understand how easy to solve certain problem is. Yeah. I think that's where we're at.
And I think that's a good view on build versus buy, because I think especially when it comes to specialized agents, the faster you can build them yourself versus trying to build them. So I've got 2 more questions, and the one is with agents, are there any preferred platforms that you're seeing out there that's the better ones to build your agents on?
I've seen some, but I'd rather not be a commercial for any of them because I do think whatever impressed me today, and I've talked to some of the folks that I've been working with, it's like you go to these, I think you were mentioning, Maria, there's an AI conference practically every week in here, and then Austin, and then Silicon Valley. And so these things are popping up all the time. And that's where I was saying that some are generalized, and they have agents where they've got, 700 pre-built agents, right, that work in certain areas. And you want to be able to deconstruct a fair amount of them, like, an agent that, I don't know, works against your HR manual. You can imagine having an agent that has, 50 common questions or whatever it might be. But each company might still have an exception, so you need to be able to decompose it, use it as a starting point. So I've seen platforms that are platform first, then agents, and even, we do work in Salesforce, so Salesforce has Agentforce, and Agentforce now has agents, and they have an agent platform for companies to create and put in exchange, an agent exchange, right? So I think you're going to see more and more of that, where people are going to encapsulate the work they've done that they think is reusable. Some will be by vendors themselves, and some will be the way it's built, that customers or partners of those vendors can build reusable agents that could then be monetized. Yep,
sounds good. And then I think for the panel as well, so what are the 8 things you should not overlook?
Say that again,
The
Marie.
things you should not overlook.
In an agent building?
Yeah. Or just with applying AI in general in the company.
So I'll give you an example. I actually created an agent this morning. And this is what happened. I'll tell you. So I used Microsoft AI Studio Copilot. By the way, you can use Google, all of these. There are so many of these to build simple agents. It's not difficult with Copilot. Microsoft, Google, or Sage, or any of these are not too difficult to create simple agents. But this is what happened since you're asking about what you need to look for. So I gave all the instructions, and then the agent was built, and then I was testing it to see what the output would be. The agent was supposed to be, I give a bunch of ideas, so what I did is, since I'm writing the AI agent book, so I gave a section of my chapter and then told it, create a LinkedIn post using this one. I gave clear instructions. You need to create these headings in Unicode and all that stuff. So what happened was it created my LinkedIn post. There was no Unicode. And guess what happened? In the instructions, I also said, create 3 to 5 hashtags. And then guess how many hashtags my agent did?
35?
Another guess?
No, it was 30. I was 35.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not kidding. When I saw this, like 4 pages, what the heck happened here? I just used the word, Microsoft Word to see the count. It was, holy smoke, it was 1,067. What happened? So what I mean is when you are creating these agents, make sure they are behaving the way you expect. Because one of the challenges, the way we used to write software was very rules-based, deterministic. And then when we moved into AI, these large language models, transformer models, the underlying mechanisms changed. They're not deterministic, they're probabilistic, stochastic. So what happens is the output, what you're expecting, as Jim was saying earlier, you get different answers from the same underlying LLM or agent. Different times you get different answers. So you need to check that. You need to test thoroughly, and the complexity associated with agents, especially when you're looking at the workflow, it's going to be very, very complex. So it's creating 1 or 2 agents may be simple, but make sure you test it very, very thoroughly, and you put the guardrails around them.
Yeah, so there are 2 ways how people use AI generally. The first one is that they know what to do and they exactly tell AI what to do. So you do this, and that, and AI executes, and done, everyone's happy, right? Because you know the outcome, and you do the task, and you just compress the time. This is the first type of approach. The second one is that where you don't know what you would get in the end, so you start to brainstorm and create, and you're just like, okay, give me an options, and then those options are usually bad, and you're just like, give me an options that X, Y, that, and they're bad too, and then it becomes this huge of a prompt, and then you don't know if those options are good or bad. So while implementing the agents, I would always start with the first approach, where you exactly know what should happen. And then once you solve that, you probably wouldn't even need to go into this creative field of just like solving this problem that you don't know how to solve. And this is the way how to do it.
I would say, thinking about QA, I think you mentioned, like QA is, and the reason why developers don't do their own QA is because they build and test themselves for the happy path, right? It does what I was tasked to do, and that's what I checked for, and it was fine, right? And you have QA teams or automated QA to test all the wrong paths, right? What's the downside if I didn't do it the way you expected? And I think with AI, the things to be cautious of are, what if it's not, what's the downside to me if this thing doesn't give me the answer I was looking for? Like, who gets hurt, right? And not physically, but who, giving a bad answer to a customer, right? In some cases, it literally could be death, right? Like if you're working in the electronics industry and it tells me to connect wires that weren't meant to be connected, I could electrocute myself, right? So what's the downside if it's not right? The other is sort of what I was getting at before, which is what's the cultural impact to the business, right? To start automating functions that will make people's heads spin inside the organization, right? So what's the impact of good, and what's the downside of bad? And really think that through before you go into it.
Because it,
So I was wanted to add, somebody asked a
That's
question
just-
about the platform.
hold on, let's give you the mic.
So we can hear you.
The question about the platform for creating agents, I don't know if it's in regards to the question, but for example, I use Cursor, And what I found is that I can code so fast and have it merge the code that building agents, I didn't know there were things that agent exchanges, and what I would imagine is it would take too long to actually find an agent that did what you wanted to do, then just have it developed and have the output just siphoned right back into Cursor and it to rewrite the agent. There's like literally no need for some other external platforms that'll give you sell you a product or whatever, because you can have it developed so fast with like Cursor and Windsurf and stuff. Yeah.
And I know if you want to explode a business person's brain, you start talking dev talk with AIs and make them run away. So I think one final question, does that then become, oh sorry, there's another question there, does that then become the HR, when training then happens, does every single employee now need to know how to program in Cursor and all these different tools, or not? Because I've been on some training sessions with some business people around the table where code speak comes in around Cursor, and you can just see these guys are ready to run out of the room. Yes.
Yes, hi. It seems to me everything's moving so fast that when you see things start happening like Firebase Studio, where it has 25 languages and you can tell it with a prompt what you wanted to build. And I tried it out the other day, incidentally, and I sat down and I said, oh, I need a band website. You know, I need to have images and video and music and this and that and the other. And I just tell it exactly what I wanted. It gave me a style checker. What is my style? I used some other stuff for dynamic imaging that is necessary. But it generated the whole website in like 2 minutes. Okay? And it was pretty damn good. And in the old days, that would be like a cheesy little site that you'd put up at some hoster or whatever, and it doesn't scale globally. This is like, it's now globally in 175 countries, and it can be localized in 45 languages instantly and all this stuff, right? So it seems to me that very soon you're going to see an AI agent creator that is a prompt-based system that's going to create whatever you want in agents, and then it's going to iterate until it's perfect. Am I crazy?
No. Who wants to tackle that response? Kirill.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, the whole challenge, the bottleneck that all the AI companies are solving now is that when an agent can start building itself, right? When the LLM can start building itself, that's everyone optimizing for. And this is why development tools like Windsurf or Cursor are so popular and so big, because you can really measure the outcome in the developers, into development. You can understand how speed the code, you can understand the quality of the code, you can measure against something into the development. So therefore, the moment AI can start building AI, we're all screwed. That's the first one, but the second one, they can build whatever we want. So yeah, I think we're definitely heading there. It's like, it's just a question of the time.
Yeah, I think we've got 2 questions here.
I have one question with you. You mentioned like you are doing something with the AI agent. You are trying to build the AI agent, right? And
no, I built one to help me write the articles.
All right. And then you commanded something, and then it give you like...
What happened was I gave a section of my chapter.
Sorry, let's just get the mic.
It didn't quite do what I instructed it, and then as an extreme case of that was I told it to give 3 to 5 hashtags, and it gave me 1,067 to be precise. So it's what I'm saying is you need to don't assume that what you're getting is 100% what you want.
Yeah.
First part of the question was like, if you got that weird, result, so what was the reason? Did you figure out like what was the mistake you might have done, or the mistake done by the agents?
Well, but this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying earlier, because the underlying models, LLM in this case, this is Microsoft Copilot. The underlying one is OpenAI's LLMs. They're not very deterministic. It's not like, you can go left, go right. That's the traditional programming style used to be. It's more probabilistic, meaning it just tries to follow the instructions, but it's not like exact science.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. So you need to be, there's a bit of uncertainty from the outcomes. And this is where, the 70% accuracy, sometimes you can have 90% accuracy, sometimes you get only 10%.
Yeah.
So this is where testing is very, very important.
Yeah. I think, we need to go on to other questions. You can ask Reddy as well during the networking. Hong?
I do have a very, very specific interest, which is, it has to do with proficiency. So I'm very interested in having an expert teach or set up whatever, an agent, with a number of very specific rules. For compliance sake or whatever, but a lot of rules, hundreds, thousands of rules that the expert will know. But to bring a junior person up to speed would take a lot of investment.
Right.
And what I'm interested in is to build an agent that would reference static documents created by the expert. And the agent, I would like the agent to just take that and converse with junior staff day in, day out, 24/7, and test whether they answer correctly. That's it. And then come back with a score. Yeah, this person is scoring at this level, and with the logs, it's referenceable, right? Deterministic or not, you do have the logs, and the senior person can just look at it. Oh yeah, this person passed, he can go do the job now, right? Is that a possibility? To me, I think, rightly or wrongly, it's pretty straightforward. So the expert doesn't need to figure out how to teach. The agent, the AI will figure that out. But the logs are there.
Yeah, let's.
If your data set is confined, Hong, you can get a very high degree of accuracy if it is confined. But the challenge becomes when it doesn't find the answers. Because what happens is, in this case, compliance, the Department of Commerce, it continuously updates the entity prohibited list, and it keeps adding this stuff. But the policies also, they keep changing. So when it doesn't find something, then it's going to guess. So.
But because I'm doing exactly what you're so we're working on some agents, voice bots, chat bots, and it's exactly where we're going is we've actually asked inside the bot. So the bot says, how can I help you, right? And I have this problem. And we load in the documents and says, okay, here's the best answers. This document on page 52, I can show you this document. But then we've said, what if we asked it to quiz me? And again, when you talk about if it's confined, if we've said this is the content, right? It's these 100 files, right? That is our knowledge base that was created by our experts, right? And so you could say, what would be some good questions? Ask me some questions to test my learning or whatever. Or the agent can create those. And we're seeing that it's asking really smart questions that are meant to test. And you also could tweak it to say, assume you're asking someone that's had 2 weeks on the job. And it'll ask simpler. It's like playing chess on the computer, right? Like you give it your level, and it'll challenge you at that level. So yeah, we're seeing that every day. We're experimenting with that, and it's fully capable of quizzing and capturing, to your point, how we did, and knowing that we're learning as we go, right? So for sure.
Great.
To me, that use case is tremendous. The ROI is tremendous.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you bring 100 people
Up to speed.
And that's
Yeah.
what I've talked about, efficiency versus proficiency. I used to say, and I still would argue in the space that I'm in, that everybody thinks it's about efficiency, and I've always said the levers of effectiveness are significantly better than the levers of efficiency. That a lot of things you do with automation pre-AI, efficiency gains were going to be limited. But if you could be more effective, and here, to your point, as soon as I started recognizing the power, I said the levers of proficiency can, in many cases, be much higher than the levels of efficiency, right? Depending on the role, depending on what you do. But I was attaching it early on to my space, which is selling technology, right? If you're someone who works for SAP or Salesforce, trying to understand everything your software does is this big, right? And it takes people, you got all kinds of specialists, and it takes 9 months to really get your head around it. And so if you can help me get my head around it and ask good questions and just teach me how to ask and get answers as if I was here for 9 months, and especially, as I was sharing before, in this age where companies are trying to move from top line growth to bottom line focus, you need to do more with lower entry resources, right? And I saw AI as a huge value lever for that.
So yeah, so does agents become now digital workers who add to headcount from an HR perspective?
Well, a number of companies are talking about their digital workers, and Salesforce is certainly talking about digital workers and having a platform that gives you a dashboard of how have my people done and how have my agents done every day.
Becomes a HR nightmare, I think. So I think we need to wrap up. Thank you so much. Obviously, we can network and ask the panelists more questions, but I really would like to say, in summary, start simple is what I heard. Definitely experiment. There's a lot to say about team collaboration when you're looking at building the different agents in solving the problems that you have. Take the jobs and break it down into different tasks. And obviously make sure that the answers are correct, that it comes out, so you need to keep on testing it, and don't go crazy on too many different tools. That can break the budget, make a CFO in the company very angry very quickly. But understand how you want to skill up, and it sounds like in this world it's more a co-learning opportunity as well, creating these internal centers of excellence and sharing knowledge that will get the companies there. But I really want to thank my panelists. Thank you so much for your information and all the questions from the audience as well. Really appreciate that, and thank you for another wonderful sessions with us here at Founders Therapy and ScaleSpark.
Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you, everyone.